everyone, it's Kristen Williams with the Williams team in Austin, Texas, here with my weekly report on what's going on in the real estate market here in Austin, Texas. So this past week, we saw a little bit of more fluctuations on mortgage rates. We've been seeing them anywhere from like the mid 6% range all the way to like 7 and 7.25. And right now that's really where they're at. So they have gone up a little bit more than they had been. They've been kind of, back and forth in the mid sixes, which has been really nice for those home buyers. We just closed a buyer yesterday and their interest rate was 6.49. So, but right now, always watching rates. Is probably not the weekend I would lock in an interest rate. But my guess is that we'll see them, dip down in the mid sixes again. We know that we're probably going to see the Fed lower rates at some time this year. They mentioned they won't make those reductions in interest rates until probably later in the year versus the summer. But we're always watching that. And that's, a metric that's important to the real estate industry. And another metric that we track this every single week. I don't always report or talk on it, but it's the average list to sales price ratio. And what that is, that's how much or what percent of the listing price does the home close for. So for example, in like 2020, 2021, in early parts of 2022, before interest rates started going up and our market changed, we would see the list to sales price ratio is like 10% above asking price or 13%, and in some cases 17%. So that was the amount that someone would pay for a home, was about 10, 15, 13% above asking price. Now we're seeing within that first 7-day period of time, meaning a home comes on the market, it gets a contract, we're seeing it close very close to asking price. That list to sales price ratio is 99.7% for those first 1 to 2 weeks. Really at 2 to 3 weeks, we're seeing that percentage be around 98.5%. So there's about 1.5% to negotiate if the home has been on the market for 2 or 3 weeks. And then anything that's been on the market 60 days or more, that is really selling between like 91% of its original list price. So there's a big, deep discount that most buyers are expecting and getting, and sellers are having to give as concessions if their home is not, getting a buyer within the first 60 days. So I would say a lot of times we have different conversations with buyers. They'll ask, how long has it been on the market? And, what's our negotiation and wiggle room? A lot of times that wiggle room really does depend on how long it's been on the market and how motivated are those sellers. A conversation we have with sellers all the time, because sometimes sellers will say, well, we'll just start high and we'll lower the price if we need to. But that strategy in this market just doesn't work great, because the longer you're on the market, the bigger discount you have to give in order to attract a buyer if you haven't met that buyer. And so I think that looking at your active competition, that's probably that's one of the strategies we look at is what's our active competition? Are we better or worse than what else is for sale in the same neighborhood? And then we try to price and a competitive strategy around that. And then also looking at sold data too. Sold data is helpful, but what I think is most helpful is the active data. But when it comes to negotiation, it really just depends on days on market. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So if you're looking for homes and find a home that's a really good house within the first 1 to 3 weeks, you probably don't have quite as much wiggle room. But if it's one that's been sitting there, there's sometimes a reason why those homes have been sitting there. But those homes that have been sitting there for a little bit longer, there's definitely some negotiation room. So we're trained to look for opportunity in any situation with each client and each individual client's needs. So reach out. We're always here to help support you in your real estate needs and goals, and have a great weekend.